What?
Hello, and we're back after a slight technical issue and a little bit of a false start. But we're back. It's Arron from Black Crow Gaming here, and tonight, as you can see, I am joined by the one and only Toby. He's back after being away, so he's here to sell us Bibles and to be the Bible salesman that we know we are. In fact, actually, whilst we're doing this false start, I thought let's just bring him back up. Here we go, Elder Toby, guys. Here he is. And as you can see, we've been joined by a very special guest. We've been spamming this all over Facebook, and we're not sorry. We have got the one and only, arguably the best player in the world, if not one of the best players in the world. We've got Glasshammer Gaming's Mani Cheema.
Hi guys, thank you very much for having me on the podcast. It's awesome.
And thank you very much for suffering through our false start, Manny. We did for the guys at home.
Oh, it's all right. That happens all the time.
We did all this, guys at home, and we were like, oh yeah, is everybody watching? And then we were just like, oh wait a minute, we've not gone live. And I was just like, oh, this is awkward. But it wouldn't be a Black Crow Gaming stream if I didn't A, do something awkward, or B, mess up the sound in some way. So we're 1 and 2 so far. So at the beginning of the stream, before we all went in this, and before we start asking Manny loads of questions and everybody starts talking about it, I'm going to do my favourite part, and I haven't shown Manny any of this. So
here we go.
Here we go. So Manny, just a little bit how you know some of the Black Crows. Obviously, you've played a few of us at tournaments, and when you went down to Cross Swords, I want to see if I can rack your brain. Do you remember playing a gentleman, quite a big ginger chap? We called him an alcoholic Santa not that long ago, if he was ginger, known by Josh.
Possibly. What army was he playing?
Oh, it was either World Eaters or it would have been Knights.
It wasn't World Eaters. Knights, yes, I do remember playing Chaos Knights. Oh, the awesome converted ones.
Probably, yeah. That sounds.
The ones with the big wings on and stuff like that.
Just put, good evening, everyone. Josh here.
Yep.
So this is Josh. So obviously, Manny, you gave him a bit of a pasting, didn't you?
Oh, we had a good game. We had a fun game.
Yeah.
You can say yes. It's all right.
So we decided that we would just for Josh's sake, just remind him of obviously
Savage.
What happened. And I think you look pretty good as a Space Marine, Manny.
Oh, I think I do. I think it would have looked better as a Space Wolf, though.
Do you know what you look even better as? Now, this is kind of going into something that you should be quite proud of. So you recently went to Nottingham GT. You went 5-0, and you did it with World Eaters. So we thought, as a little
I was really happy with that.
And I'd like to think that you would want to share this as well. We thought we'd do World Eater Manny.
Yeah!
That's cool, right?
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
For sure.
5-0 at Nottingham GT, UKTC, and you smashed it. You were very unlucky not to make the top cut. I think you came, 7th overall?
Yes, 7th, yeah.
Yeah. So you dropped a couple points in your earlier games, but then came home really strong as I was looking. But, we said at the beginning that you are arguably, if not the best player in the world, and you've been number 1 on UKTC. You've done the World Championships. You have absolutely smashed it. So there's a photo on your Instagram of you with, top of UKTC, top of this, and you look great. So we thought we'd make it look even better, and we would add all of the skulls of all the victims that you took over the years.
Oh my god!
And here you are.
That looks cool. I like that. That looks cool.
Yeah, you can keep that. So we thought, as part of it, Manny, we would just give you a little bit of appreciation for just you've done amazing for what you've done. And as we said, later in the stream, we're going to ask you some questions and we're going to kind of pick your brains and that. But we're going to go into our community post. Now, as you're a World Eater fan, I thought I'd show off one of our very own Black Crow Gamers, Sam Dickinson. He is a World Eaters fanboy, and he took to the Nottingham UKC his World Eaters. And they look amazing. Now, I don't know how great the photo is, but he, like you, Manny, took shed loads of £8.
Of £8. £8's cool.
They are cool.
They are cool. And he has Angry Ron.
Yeah, well,
Got to run Angry Ron.
if you're gonna take this army, I feel like there's one thing you must take, and that is the Ron himself. And he was very, very cool. So what I wanted to get into now, and I think it's really important that you give us, before we go into the next bit, Manny, is you have got a tournament happening in June. I have a ticket.
Yes, the Glasshammer GT Birmingham.
Yeah.
It's our first ever super major, our first ever one. We've never run one before, but we do have experience of running large events. So, rest assured, guys, we do know what we're doing. Before the lockdown, see, we had a bit of an unfortunate situation where we ran our first really big event. It was like 120 odd players, 130 players, something like that. And before the lockdown, like 3 or 4 years ago, that was really big. There were no super majors back then in the UK, or very, very little. And when we did that, it was literally like 7 months before lockdown. And then lockdown happened and we couldn't do the tournaments anymore. And we were like, we only just did one big one. And then after that, we had to really concentrate on the store and just keeping Glasshammer alive kind of thing. But now that, we're back on our feet and everything's, running smoothly, touch wood, everyone touch wood. Now that we're in that space, we're looking to see where we can go forwards. And we thought, let's bring the events back. We had a really fun time running the events. And I know people had a great time when they came to the events. So we thought, let's hit the super majors. Now we actually are in a position where we can. So let's go with it. And we thought, we'd gauge some interest. And I mean, you guys, everybody listening, guys, you lot have been fantastic. Thank you so much. We're only able to do what we do because of the support that you guys give us. And we were not expecting, our target was 50. We were trying to sell 50 tickets in like the first day or even the first week, and we'd be really happy with it because, the event's still in 6 months' time from now. We were not expecting to sell over 100 in the first week. And that is what's happened. We've sold 110 tickets in the first week. So there's 190 left. Like a third of the tickets have gone in a week, and the event's in 6 months' time. And I've had a load of people message me saying, they're trying to get their international team sorted. I've got people from Luxembourg, France, Italy, Spain, Germany, all messaged, and they're trying to get teams to see if they can come down. I've also got people saying, just because Christmas has come out of it, they're waiting for payday of January before they buy their tickets. So I think the next 100 or so are also going to go very quickly. And it's just great and fantastic to see the support from the community. And, it's a little bit different to the super majors that we've got at the moment. So we're hoping, it gives flavor. We don't want to compete with other people running super majors. I think it's fantastic what the other people running super majors have done for the competitive community. I think that's amazing. So we don't want to clash with any of them. So we thought, we'll use different terrain. We'll use a different scoring system and offer something different so that we're not treading on each other's toes and, just build the tournament scene all together.
And what I love about what you're bringing out with this, obviously, this new style tournament, is that you are bringing WTC scoring to the UK. Now, typically, that's not really heard of at tournaments. We all tend to really stick in our safe
for sure.
bubble. So, just Manny, what was the process in deciding to go WTC over all the options that we currently use in the UK? What made you go that way?
There were kind of two main reasons. The first one was that we wanted the event to be European friendly. And if you speak to any of the players from the WTC international teams, they pretty much are all quite experienced with WTC, but not very much with just normal scoring. And that's because their focus in Europe, usually the whole year round, is trying to play for their national team and attend the WTC playing for their national team, which is totally understandable. So we thought, to make it more European friendly and to get more people coming over and make it kind of like an international type thing where people come and they can play the best players from across other countries, all across Europe and stuff like that. And that's one of the reasons that we thought we'd go WTC for the scoring, just because, it gets more people in. But another key reason, it was for tiebreakers. So no system is perfect, I will say that I don't think there's any system at the moment which is clear cut the best one. But when you do the points thing, you could have people all ending on 500 points, for example, people that all get 100 for every game. And then you don't really get a clear winner. That can happen. That's a thing that can happen if you use just scores. But also if you use the opponent win rate percentage. I know a lot of people are using that now. the one thing I really dislike about that is, say you go undefeated, you've gone 5-0, but you turn up and on day 2, one of your opponents from earlier in the tournament, say like your first or second round opponent, just drops out and they don't turn up. All of a sudden, your opponent win rate percentage is going to be at the bottom of all the people who've gone 5-0. So something that's totally out of your control has just dictated where you are on the rankings. So we thought, you know what can we do that's a little bit different? Now, the WTC scoring, it does 2 things in itself, which we found were amazing. The first thing, which is, admin wise, is you're not going to get, even if people get 100 points, they probably won't get 520 nils. There are games where, you can score, if you play the normal scoring system out of 100, when you go to that tournament, you can go with the mindset of, I'm going to build a list to score as many points as possible and just don't worry about my opponent. It doesn't matter what they bring. I'm just going to pick these 2 secondaries every game and I'm going to play my own game and I'm going to get like 90 plus points in every game. And that should put me somewhere near the top. But with WTC, you can't do that. So say you go in with that mindset, you score 100 points in your game. But because you're not fussed about your opponent, you're just trying to score as many as you can. If they get 80 points, you've only won the game 13-7. You're no longer going to be at the top. So you can't just build your army to score 100 points every game. You need to be scoring high and keeping your opponent's score low at the same time. So so that's the first thing, is you need to go in with a different mindset to normal tournament. So it offers something different. And we were really, in favor of that. But the second thing it does, and this is the most important thing, it makes more fun and interactive games. So that's one of the things that we realized with normal scoring is, because you can do that whole, I'm just going to score as high as I can and sit on my own side of the board. Some armies can do that by literally sitting in their own half of the board and they can score 90 plus points, which, that's not very interactive. However, with the WTC, because you need to keep your opponent's score down, you need to go and interact with them. You need to go and kill units in their army. You need to stop them scoring this and scoring that. So it becomes a lot more of an interactive game where you're both trying to cut each other's points while scoring high yourself. So that's what we think. It makes a more fun and interactive game. And also, you need to go in with a different mindset to the other super majors in the UK to score well. So that's why we went with it.
Yeah, that's a very, very good comprehensive explanation. And I couldn't agree with you more based on strength of schedule. Like, we talked about it in some of our previous podcasts, guys. So if you go back and you can watch that, we talk about like some of the negatives, and actually strength of schedule can produce a huge feel bad. So the fact that you guys have thought about that with your tournament and you're actively looking to take that away, I think is a massive plus to your tournament. And it's one of the things that really has attracted me to want to come to your tournament, is because as a player, especially with like custody player at the minute, like, don't get me wrong, I've struggled, but I still score high. Like, it's not like I'm losing games by much. If I'm winning, I'm not necessarily winning by much. So I wouldn't necessarily place high. But for example, I went to a tournament not long ago, and strength of schedule dropped me down to the bottom of 3 and 2, for example, when actually I had the highest scoring point percentage of all of them. So I would have actually have been 5th or 6th. And strength of schedule, because I had an opponent take a 0 and an opponent dropped me literally like that. It's like bang, straight down the bottom. And it happens, like you can't dictate or predict or control what your opponents do.
That's mean. It's just it's like a little bit of a feel bad just because it's something that's not in your control, right? Yeah, I totally understand.
And I mean, Manny, we've got quite a lot of questions building up for you in the chat already, so we'll get to those shortly. But I think one of the things that you're very brave doing, like, is super major wise in the UK at the minute. We have the UKTC events, we have Beachhead, and now yourself probably coming in with. I mean, I know there's Hellstorm, but they're like 100 and something odd players. You're probably going to be the biggest independent other than UKTC tournament, and you're going WTC, so you can quite happily claim the biggest WTC tournament in the country, in the whole of the UK. Yeah.
WTC style scoring, yeah, for sure.
Which is absolutely amazing. It's so brave that you've gone to do that, especially when you sold 60 tickets in 50 tickets in 60 minutes.
Yeah, it was 50 tickets in 60 minutes. So we genuinely not expecting that at all.
Which was amazing. I'm quite happy because I got the 200th ticket. So
Oh, nice.
I was waiting because you said that the first 100 tickets will obviously get some loot, and I was like,
yeah.
It was 201, and then it went to 200, and I went, fuck it. And I was like, I want it. I want the loot. I want the swag. So I thought I'd go for it.
I love it.
And then some other guys in our team have also been saying, they've got their passes from the wives and so on. So we'll hopefully be there in strength, Manny, too.
That's great news.
Show you some support. So we're gonna start asking you some questions, and I'm gonna let Toby kind of take over from this point because he's itching and he's been managing the chat. So Toby, how about we go through some of the chat questions first, and then once the chat questions go, you can start asking Manny about the Nottingham side, and we'll go from there.
Yeah, Manny, you all okay with that?
Yeah, not a problem at all.
Excellent. Okay, so there's one that Stephen has, although he's just decided to absolutely pan me by saying it's my 16th birthday that day. Thanks, mate. No, it's he's asked, how do you go about planning your competitive armies? Because he's noticed the trend that a lot of the time it's usually three of the strongest unit in that faction. He's quoted the Rax list that you're quite well known for playing, and then the cultist list that you've been playing recently with Chaos. So do you want to talk us through what your thought process is when you're deciding what army and then what to put in that army?
So yeah, basically if you're trying to win a tournament or win a super major and you're going in with that sort of attitude, I think the important thing is to hammer down what you want to accomplish at the tournament, because there's two ways that you can go about trying to podium. In my opinion, there are two effective ways, and these are the ways that I look at basically myself. Is I look at it and I go, right, either you look at sort of the top 1 to 3 factions in the game, because they are, stats wise, they are there for a reason. They're obviously very competitive. They've got some great combos in there. So you look at those 3 and you go, I'm either going to play one of these 3 because, they've got a solid basis. I can add my own touch to it maybe and take in a different direction. Or I'm going to look at an army that's good into 2 of the 3, or if not all 3 of the 3 best armies in the game. And you go, you know what, I'm going to take this army. Maybe it's like the 9th or 10th best faction in the game. However, when I play the early-ish rounds where, you might not get a player who's also aiming to try and win the event, you can go, okay, I'm playing matchups that aren't necessarily great for me. However, I will rely on, my player skill to kind of get me through these early on rounds so that, hopefully when I get to rounds 4 and 5, when I'm going to play the top players who are also trying to win the event, hopefully they're going to have these top 3 armies in the game that I've built my army to counter. So those are the two kind of routes you can go down, either building a counter to the meta or taking, one of the best armies in the meta. Those are the kind of like the easiest routes to, getting a podium.
Okay, excellent. Yeah, I mean, that summed that up really well. Something that I'm really curious about is how different it is in those early rounds compared to the later rounds. And does that almost feel like a different meta when you're playing against that sort of select group of top players versus the sort of the earlier rounds where you're more likely to get a more random sort of, someone like me?
Yeah, but the difference is you can, like early on, you could just hit a really bad matchup. So, for example, like I go in with the CSM, right? And Tower obviously a strong faction. But I think, like Chaos Space Marines, for example, when I was going to Atlanta. So Chaos Space Marines, Eldar, and like Marines were pretty much everywhere. So I was like, okay, I can, I'm fairly good against Eldar. With the, this was with the accursed cultist build. I was like, okay, I'm fairly good against Eldar. I've got a strong game there, and that's one of the best armies in the game. I also have a pretty good game into Marines. some of them can be very close, but it's kind of like in my favor. And sort of like if some of the objectives are hidden, I know that I could perform very well against Marines. And then the CSM game, I'm like, I can give them, a very good game. CSM games are always very close, but, having the accursed, if they don't have the accursed, maybe lets you push them off a primary somewhere they weren't expecting. So I looked at those and I was like, okay, these are the armies I'm expecting people to bring on masse. So I'm very good against those. However, Tau is a bad game for me. Like the Fire Warriors and Devilfish, stuff like that. Now I'm like, well, I don't think very many of the top players will bring that, because if they're trying to also win the World Championships of Warhammer, they're going to bring one of the best armies there are and stuff like that. So I was expecting that. However, early on in the rounds, you could just hit a Tau player who likes their Devilfish and their Breaches because that's what they have fun with. And all of a sudden, I've just lost round one because, they bought an army that was really, really cool and it was a counter to mine. And, the chances of me hitting a Tau player with the right tools to deal with my army are very low. So it's all about taking chances. I don't think there's an army in the game that just destroys every other army in the game. So, you think about it like that and you go, right, there's a lower chance of me hitting these things. So I'm going to take this army because the armies that are counters to mine have got a very low chance of hitting those. So that's how I went about the World Championships of Atlanta. And then unfortunately for me, Andrew Gogno, who is one of the best Tau players in the world, was in my pod at Atlanta with the Breacher spam Tau, and yeah, that I was like, damn, I don't want to hit that. And I think everybody else in my pod was hoping that Andrew just knocks me out, and I was there praying that please, someone either take out Andrew Gogno or give me him in a mission that favors me. So yeah, that was very, very fun. That event was amazing.
How much were you praying to the Emperor when you saw that pod?
Oh my God, I saw that pod and I was like, we're in a death pod. Our pod was one of the death pods. There were like 3 pods out of the 8 that were super, super tough. They were all tough. There weren't any like really easy ones. They were all tough, but there were 3 pods. You look at them, you're like, wow, there's like 6 players in those pods out of like 12 or 16 or whatever it was. There were like good 6 players that could all just win the pod. So it was it was something. It was a great experience though. It was absolutely phenomenal. And I realized that was a bad matchup. And sometimes, guys, you just gotta rely on your luck. And I do get quite lucky, luckier than most. Jammy Manny comes from somewhere, and like on my shirt it says, "Just roll 6s, bro." And sometimes you just gotta take that leap of faith. And when I played Andrew, that was the case. We played the mission, the one where your home objectives don't count for anything in terms of primary.
Yeah.
Right, yeah.
Only the middle 3 count, and then they start disappearing. And they count, the one that's at the end of the game is worth like a shed load of points. We played in that game, and I was like, okay, this helps me a bit now, because the thing I was scared of was trying to get to him. And, if he could sit on his home objective and it was worth 5 points every turn, he would just blow me off the board and not need to even come out of his deployment zone. But at least the deployment zone ones were worth nothing. So we had these 3 in the middle. They were worth all the points. And I looked at Gogno and I was like, bro, terrible matchup for me. I was like, there's only one chance that flips the game on its head and actually makes it good for me. And that's if I just take the biggest risk in the world. And then, just roll a 5 or a 6. And he was like, what? And I was like, I'm going to do it. And he was like, interesting. And I was like, man, it's a bad matchup. Sometimes you just got to take a leap of faith. I stacked. So our deployment zone was like this, like the quarters.
Yeah.
I stacked my entire army here. All 3 rhinos all went here with all of my chosen in, and double a curse bricks for here. I had one over here just in case, but my whole army was basically down here. And I was like, this objective right here, Gogno, if this is the one that survives at the end of the game, you're now in big trouble. And I was like, go on, Andrew, roll the dice. I was like, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Which one disappears first? And he rolled a 1. So I was like, okay, so this one where I put none of my army, that one's going to disappear first. Perfect. And then I got him to roll the second dice as well. I was like, right, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Which one stays at the end? And then he rolled a 6. And I was like, wow, it's this one here. And the entire game just flipped on its head. Because it was like, it went from a extremely good matchup for Gogno to just because I put my entire army on one side, gambled, and that was the objective that stayed. it just flipped on its head and went entirely in my favor. And I was like, sometimes you're just going to take that risk. I mean, genuinely, if it was one of the other two objectives, I think I would have lost in the pod stages and not won Atlanta. It was literally the player skill of players at that level is so high, and Andrew would have. I have no doubt. If it was one of the other two objectives and I had to play the long game with Andrew, he would have smoked me. He genuinely would have. He's a fantastic player, really nice guy to play as well. And he took it on the chin that the objectives on the other side. We had a laugh about it, and it was fantastic. But it just goes to show you can hit something early on that was just built as a counter to your list and just get smoked. So you have to kind of go in hedging your bets.
Yeah, I think that brings up a really interesting point here. And this might be a bit of a nebulous question, but when do you kind of make that choice to go for a gamble rather than sort of playing to the odds? What thought process has to happen to push you towards that more gambling route?
Is this like in a game, like when you're going into a game and you know it's a bad game?
Yeah.
So that exact thing. If you think the matchup is a bad one for yourself, there may be some gambles that you need to take somewhere. So, for example, if you know the matchup, so we knew the night before what the matchup was for the morning. So I was sat there and I was looking at the map. I got it up on my phone and I was like, okay, with this mission, how badly could this go for me? And what chances, what are my win conditions for the game here? I knew I had to get into his big 6-man crisis unit, but not early on. I was like, if I can get rid of the devilfish that are transporting the breaches around, that's the thing that's going to slow down Andrew's scoring. So I know that I score pretty highly with my list because, I can take things like deploy teleport homers and also bring it down because he's Tau, like everything gives up those points. So I know I can fairly reliably score high on my secondaries, but the problem is my list usually denies primaries very well and scores it very well. But in this mission, to score the primaries and deny the primaries, you've got to be out in the open in the middle of the board. So I was like, for me to be able to go out in the open in the middle of the board and take some punishment, I need to first destroy the units that are going to score Andrew's points. So I was like, right, I need to concentrate on the breaches. What's the way for me to do this? And in every situation, I was like, well, Andrew doesn't really need to come forward with them unless I force him to. And the only way to force him to, in my opinion, was to take that gamble and, stack my entire army and go, right, if it's this one, if it's this objective here, or perhaps the middle one, because my entire army was in a clump here, if it's one of these two that stays, now the pressure is on you to score high early on in case I go, second and I can score all the points at the end. And in that case, Andrew did have to bring his breaches out. He had to bring 3 devilfish out to kind of block me and stop me moving as far as, I wanted to move. But that gave me all of his scoring units fairly early on. And, it's that kind of thinking about it. I was like, this is a bad matchup for me. If I try to play this normally and just try and play the mission to the same game plan that I've been playing in previous rounds, I'm probably going to lose this game. So I'm like, it's a singles event. So it's not, your mindset has to be completely different in teams to singles, because in singles, you're like, right, if I lose by a point, it still doesn't matter. If Andrew scores 95 and I score 94, that's not a huge achievement for me. I'm out of getting in that top cut. So you're like, it's worth taking a risk now, because a risk could, rather than playing the game reliably, scoring high points, but losing averagely, it's like, am I better off throwing a spanner in the work and just making him think on his feet and going a different route and taking a gamble? So it's that kind of thinking is, if a game is very bad for you or looks like it's going to be bad for you if you play it conventionally, then, try and go for a gamble.
Okay, yeah, I mean, I think that sums it up really well. I think because we were saying we're gonna hopefully get some really good tactical points here, and I think the way of viewing those percentage chances and when to sort of go for it, I think that is sometimes the difference between sort of the lower ranking players and the higher ranking players. Would you say that's a fair point?
Yeah, I think there's a couple of things in game that if you spot them and you've thought about them before the event or just before that game even, they can give you a big edge over your opponent. And I think it's, if you're looking to score very highly at a tournament, those are some kind of things you should look into. Like, for example, one of the biggest tips I can give to people is either use TTS. You can use TTS. Now, I don't like to use TTS personally. I'm not a big fan of TTS. So what I do is I set the board up in person. So what I do is I've bought, like a UKTC set of terrain, for example, because those are the big super majors at the moment that everybody's going to and that I'm going to be playing in. So I bought a set of that terrain. And what I do is I set up a table and I lay the terrain down in different deployments. Like, this is what the terrain looks like in this mission. This is what the terrain looks like in this mission. And I will get my army and I will practice deploying my army. And I'll go, right, how much of it can I, reliably get on the board in the positions where I want them to be to do the role that they need to in the game? And how many of the units will I have to put in reserve or put in unfavorable positions where they're not going to be doing very much? And then, that's how I kind of build my list. I look at what I can get on the board in the positions where I want. And if it's inefficient, like maybe it's the most efficient list on paper, but on the board, it doesn't look so efficient because you can't put the units where you want them to be, then, you kind of fine tune your list and you go, maybe if I took this unit, it'd give me a bit more speed. Or if I took this unit, they can hold down this flank better and stuff like that. So I think setting boards up and setting up terrain and practicing deploying your army is one of the biggest tips I could give anyone.
So, Manny, earlier, before we started the stream, you were like, oh, do you think I should clear up my table of... I'm going to use the word shit behind me. And I was like, oh, no. Is that because secretly behind you, you've been like planning your next army and you've got...
Yeah, this behind me is a pile of shame. Look at it. It's a pile of shame. So I was wondering where I should clear it up, but this is what it looks like in here, guys. This is, I just thought, let's give you a proper perspective into my life.
So this is Mani Cheema au natural.
Yeah, this is what it looks like. You can see, like, above the floorboards bit on the walls, the blue bit is all very nice and smart. We've got the sister, we've got all the really nice painted stuff by David all over there. And then as soon as you get below the wooden bit, it's all just crap everywhere. That's my workspace.
This is the true Manny right here. So, Toby, I'm going to get you to ask a few more questions. There's a couple that we'll go back to later on because we'll get onto obviously Corn side of it. But if we go on to like the Gothic Games one, for example, and then we'll look at like Andrew's one as well. Toby, what do you reckon?
Yeah, I mean, I think both of them are. One of them, the Gothic Games one, we've covered a little bit already, and we were chatting a little bit before the stream started as well. But I think a really interesting one. Essentially, it's apart from the small codex imbalances. Eldari, how have you found 10th in comparison to 9th edition, and what sort of your feelings about the future of 10th? Are you positive? Are you feeling a bit negative? Where's your head at?
I'm feeling quite positive about it, to be honest. I think the Nottingham GT, I think was great, and although Necrons were there in a massive percentage, Necrons and Eldar were still there in a massive percentage. However, if you look at the top cut of 4, I think it was really cool to see that it was 4 completely different factions in the top 4. The top 4 was 1 Necron player, 1 Eldari player, 1 Tyrannid player, and 1 Space Marine player. Like, I think that was fantastic. And the next few people down that could have gotten in was, like me with World Eaters, which again is completely different to what them 4 were playing. So I think it was really cool to see that there were multiple factions that were in the top 4 and in the undefeated bracket as well. I think there was Guard there, Nassim with his Guard as well. So the top 4 were all different. Then me with World Eaters, Nassim with Guard. That's like 6 of the top 10 complete different factions. So I think right now the game is in a fairly decent place as it is already. But I feel like with this data slate coming, I think the game's going to be in a very, very good place, even better than it is now. I think right now the game's not too bad. Like we say, Eldari, and but also CSM as well. Like, playing CSM, I feel like they are very overpowered. When I was playing them, the World Eaters feel so much different to the CSM. If the CSM army just feels too cheap. It feels like I've got too many things in the army that I shouldn't have. A lot more things in the army than any other army, basically, and it just feels wrong to have so much power armored stuff and things like that in the army, I think. But I think with the changes coming, I'm very confident in the changes coming, to be fair. GW hired a new person, a fresh face, to be correcting the imbalances in the game. And I think that person has got years of tournament experience, like way more than myself. They were, winning tournaments in the game when I was like 10 years old. Didn't even know what Warhammer was. They've been, dominating the tournament scene for 15 plus years now. So they've got a wealth of experience to draw from. And I think they're going to do a great job balancing the game. So I'm very positive, looking forward to this data set and the rest of 10th edition.
I think there's been some rumors about the data slate points. And we on our podcast last week we played Warhammer Bollocks, which is basically where we look at a league and we kind of say, do we think this is actually real or is it absolute crap? And they released 5 leaks, and I very much think that they were just terribly edited. Can't be true. And if they were true, I'd be like, what? They were going past it. I know Games Workshop in the past has released some stuff and it's been terribly edited and so on, but I do feel very much that it's quite easy to edit and to wish list, isn't it? And they felt very much like fans wanting their the points. Like, for example, this was with the Custodians actually. The Venatari, there were a unit of 3 Venatari, which I think is quite a good unit. They had them at 175 points for free. Now I think that is mad cheap. Manny, you've gone very quiet.
175 points for 3 Venatari.
Yeah.
Okay. You think that's mad cheap? What are they now?
200 points.
200 points. 175, I think, would be quite good.
Do you reckon?
Personally. Yeah, I think, it's a 3-man infantry unit.
Yes, but it is a custodian infantry unit.
It is a custodian infantry unit. If you look at similar things that put out quite a lot of output, say, because their main role is like moving quickly, shooting and scoring. For Venatari, they do have some combat punch, but mainly, you want to plink away with them and you want to move really fast and score with them, right? That's their role. So let's look at the Marine equivalent, shall we?
Yeah.
That comes in around 110 points, if I'm not mistaken. 3 Inceptors that can, move fast. They can deep strike 3 inches away. I don't believe the Custodians can do that. They can deep strike 3 inches away. They can get flat 3 damage plasma that's twin linked. So I feel that their shooting is probably a little bit more reliable than Venatari. They can deep strike within 3 inches and score better than the Venatari. And
they are bollocks as well. They're the ultimate feel bad, and you should feel bad, Toby, because you run loads of them. You absolute cheesy monster. But
I'm only bringing 6 this weekend, okay?
Oh, only bringing 6. But no, that's a very good point. But this is the thing: the Inceptors, they don't feel too overpowered.
I feel like maybe that if their points were like 10 high and they were like 120 points, okay, cool. They are very reliable with their shooting with the twin linked. They're also very reliable at scoring with the 3-inch deep strike. But at 120 points, I'm like, okay, they're not broken. They're just a very good unit. So for Venatari to be 80 points more at 200 points, it's kind of a bit ridiculous, to be fair.
But then if you look at you only have to look at the Custodians bikers, man, and you can see why Custodian players are upset. They are going to live on my shelf for a long time.
Well, hopefully Custodians get a little bit of an edit, at the moment, their army rule is just rubbish, since they said devastating wounds don't count as mortal wounds, they've just lost their whole 4 at feel no pain against mortal wounds for their whole army, and that was their their whole thing.
Don't worry, we get 4 at feel no pain against vehicles exploding. That happens sometimes. Tank shock.
Grenades.
But all these weapons in the game that are doing a hell of a lot of damage right now, Forge Fiends, Chaos Lords of Thunderhammers, all of this kind of stuff, and Warp Spiders, it's all devastating wounds now, which would just completely bypass any protection that Custodians have, had. So there's going to be there should definitely be some sort of edit to get Custodians back to at least being able to have a decent army rule. So I'm expecting some good things. We'll see.
Yeah, something that keeps me positive about that as well is because the Dark Angels book is coming out pretty soon as well, and their sort of Watcher in the Dark ability and everything like that is the same as Custodes, and has suffered the same, not to the same extent, of course, but it has still suffered. They'll want to make, they're bringing out a Deathwing box. They're going to want to make them as good as possible. So I think they will address that in the next balanced data slate. But I mean, I actually feel quite positive for Custodes in the next one. I think that they're gonna get a big old pickup, which is good because I feel quite similar to you, Manny, in regards to the meta. I've been really positive about it. I think it's I only started playing right at the very end of 8th and only competitively in 9th, but I've been having so much fun with it. So it's really great to see so many people being able to bring those different armies.
Yeah, for sure.
I think with what's happened over the last sort of few years, like 3-4 years maybe, and this is obviously thanks to like YouTube and social media and the characters like yourself coming out, Manny, the competitive scene has exploded.
Yeah, it has. Yeah,
when
it genuinely has.
I mean, I've been doing this hobby for 20 years, and well, longer than that, and this is really showing my age. But there never was a point where we were getting updates as regularly as we are.
Mm-hmm.
They weren't releasing models as fast as they are. We weren't getting codexes as quickly as we were. And that partly is to do with the fact that we've got this massively growing competitive scene that people like to be slightly negative about. But actually it means that the game is always refreshing itself.
For sure.
Makes playing 40k and AOS, for example, really exciting because if there's a period where you're really not enjoying this game, in a few weeks' time, it'll probably get flipped on its head and it will completely change, and hopefully revive the passion a little bit. Have you found that with yourself? Have you ever come into a point where you've been feeling a little bit stale, and then the data slate's dropped and it's kind of brought back the excitement?
Yeah, that does happen, and so the thing is, sometimes I've looked at it and like a data slate has come out and it's made an army unusable, and I don't enjoy when that happens. Like when an army is an army is top of the top, but then it just becomes unusable. And you're just like, okay, yeah, you didn't need to do that. You've like double, triple nerfed this army at the same time. Like some of them you look at and you go, just a points increase would fix these problems, or just a data slate changing a few rules will fix these problems. And then it comes out and they've increased all the points of every single good unit and nerfed their rules at the same time. So it's like you've upped the points to where it should be according to the rules they have, but then you've also taken the rules away. So now they're just rubbish. So sometimes they do that, and I'm not a big fan of that, but I'm pretty confident that going forwards, we're going to see less of that. I mean, we already have been seeing less of that. Yeah. I think, the books and codexes that are coming out now, they're played quite well. And, I think you can build fluffy armies with them. You can build competitive armies with them. And it feels like the armies that are coming out now, kind of, they play the way that they should play. The armies are playing the way that you'd feel they'd play in the lore. And I'm a real big fan of that. So I like that.
I will take my hat off to him, actually, and say... So the Necrons obviously got their book recently, and they got FAQ'd almost immediately because it's clear that they realised that there was an interaction they didn't want to happen.
Yeah.
And they straight away sorted that out. So if this is down to obviously the new team that's involved in sort of making sure that these books are okay.
Yeah, I think it will be, yeah.
The turnaround time for that is probably one of the fastest I've seen for them to identify something and have it fixed quite quickly. I don't know if it necessarily took away the complete potency of it. However, it definitely cleared it up. And I think
it was it shows that it's an oversight that they didn't intend for you to be able to exploit, kind of thing. Because, man, it is exploitive. I had the displeasure of playing against that combo. I think we're talking about the Immortals being given the Canotech or Cryptech keyword by having a Cryptech in their unit, so the entire unit just gets Tesla that does devastating wounds. That's the one we're talking about, isn't it?
Yes, sir.
Yes.
Yeah, had a unit of those shoot a unit of my Khorne Berserkers and killed 7.5 of them just with 6s, like just with devastating. That's before I had to take like 21 saves. It killed like 15. It did 15 devastating wounds to my unit.
Oh my
on
God.
this infantry battle line unit that they have in their army. So I think it was kind of obvious when GW released that FAQ. You're like, okay, there's a rule that people are exploiting that GW it was like an oversight. They glanced over it and missed it, but they were very quick to rectify it. And that's I think that's positive, very positive for the gaming community that GW are on it as much as they are. I think they're doing a fantastic job right now.
Yeah, I got to agree. I like that. Go on, Toby. Sorry, my man.
Yeah, no, I've always thought with games, when you release a new set of rules, it's impossible for your testing team to play the sheer number of games that the community can do. Yeah, and so there is going to be someone that is always able to break it. I used to play a lot of Magic the Gathering, and we used to have that every single time a set came out, and that speed that they address things is just so key for the health of the game. And to see that, again, really, really positive about that. I think hopefully we should. But actually, by the time the Glasshammer tournament runs around, we should have like the perfect meta.
hopefully.
I mean, Jesus, Toby, Christ! I don't know if we can predict that far ahead. There's never going to be a perfect.
I'm going to go for it.
Scenario because let's be honest, you're never going to get perfection. But I think the hobby is definitely in a very, very, very positive place. So, Mani, I'm going to move it on because there's one question we got asked right at the very beginning, and this is going to be from Sam Dickinson himself, the guy who we supported for our community army this week. If you haven't seen it, guys, and you've only just tuned in, please rewind back, have a look at his awesome Angry Ron, and I'm also going to ask Sam to post all of these photos into the Black Crow Gaming Discord, which you can find in our description below. Yeah, right down there. Anyway, Mani, how did you find not running the Favoured of Khorne? Did he find he was playing safer with Arron because of the less likely to revive? Did he have any trouble with T1 blessings without any rerolls? Now, I'm going to assume you know more about that.
Oh, okay, yes. So I think they're talking about the Juggerlord. Is it the Juggerlord you're talking about? Let us know. I think they're talking about. Yeah, they are, right. Yeah, they're talking about the Juggerlord that gives you, the reroll of your 8 blessing dice. Now, okay, I'm going to be honest. I'm going to be totally honest here, right? So, if I was trying to win the event, I would have bought my Chaos Space Marines still. The ones that I won Atlanta with, I would have definitely bought them. But I had different goals, moving forwards. I think I achieved all of my goals for last year. I managed to win Atlanta, a huge achievement. I'm really proud of that. But also, I think I'm number 1 in ITC at the moment in the world rankings, and I'm not attending LVO, so I think there's places for people to jump me. But if they don't, I think, I will have achieved both of my really big gaming goals that I wanted to achieve. So now I've kind of switched over, and I want to just play the things that I really enjoy playing. For 2024, that's my goals for this year. And I think everybody who knows me knows that I like combat. I'm a combat guy. I prefer combat armies to shooting armies, and I always have. Orcs are my favorite faction, by far. I like orcs, space wolves, custodes, Drakari, and world eaters. And all 5 of those armies have something in common, and that is they are mainly combat focused. And I absolutely love that. So I was going for a bit of a break, really, to Nottingham. And of course, I was always going to try and do as well as I can, but, with World Eaters. And the reason why I took the World Eaters is because my good friend David painted for me. And he paints extremely well, guys. If you want to see any of his work, I mean, he's painted these Wraith Knights for me in a Galaxy Nebula scheme. And they are on his Instagram. It's called David Paints. Go and check it out. He sponsors us, which I think is absolutely fantastic. If you go on Instagram and you go on, David Paints, I think it might be Glasshammer David Paints or just David Paints. And, just follow him. Have a look at some of the work he's done on there. My Wraith Knight is on there. You can see my Eldar that he painted. You can see his Forge Fiends he's painted for himself. And also my World Eaters. And I think he's done an absolutely phenomenal job on them. So I wanted to play them because he's got them ready. And I was just raring to go. And if anybody did see them, I mean, if you guys, if you add me to your Discord after the stream, I'm happy to put my pictures of my World Eaters in there that they've painted. I think they're phenomenal. But if anybody has seen them or was at the event, you'll notice that they're in the Heresy scheme because I prefer the Heresy scheme. So they're all blue and white. They're not red World Eaters. They're the blue and white pre-Heresy scheme. And even my rhinos, they're the Heresy rhinos with the blue and white on them. So because it was all painted Heresy, I actually wanted to go at it fluffy. I was like, I am only going to take infantry and Angron. Because that's what we're, heresy is all infantry and Angron. So I was like, I am not going to take the Juggerlord characters. So I'm not going to take the Lord Invocatus to give myself pre-game moves. And I'm not going to take this Juggerlord, even though, in my opinion, taking the Juggerlord is the right move competitively. It is the right move competitively, guys. Genuinely, I'm going to say that. Dropping 3 8-bound doesn't hurt my list essentially, like, massively. Dropping 3 8-bound to put the Juggerlord in with the Favorite of Khorne is definitely the right play competitively. But I was just like, I'm not going to do it. Just out of principle, I'm going to take all infantry and Angron and just do it. And, as we said, guys, just roll 6s, bro. There was actually, I actually just believed in Angron and just rolling these 8 dice every turn. There was not a turn in the whole event. There was not a turn where I needed advance and charge and I didn't get it. I got a 4++ or a 6 every turn I needed it. Every time I needed it, it was there.
How many times did you bring Angron back? Come on, man.
Happy with it. Well, see, this is the thing. Everyone would assume that it'd be loads because of how many 6s I roll and how lucky, I'm known to be. But he only came back twice.
I mean, that's still quite
But I will
going.
preface that by saying that was 67% of the time. Or 66.66% of the time. Because in 2 games, he survived the entire game without dying.
Wow.
Whoa,
Yeah, so in 2 of the games, I used him. And like they were saying in the chat, I think, was it Stephen that asked the question in the chat? Somebody asked that question about were you playing more defensively because you didn't take the Juggerlord? So yeah, so not taking the Juggerlord was genuinely just a fluff choice. And I just wanted to take pure infantry. So that's why I didn't take him. But because I didn't take him, I had to think about the game in a different way. I know I'm less likely to get Angron back if he dies. But I also know I have more 8-bound in my list. I have 5 units of 8-bound in my list. And on top of that, I had these 2 big bricks of Khorne Berserkers. Because I didn't take those characters on the Rhinos, it gave me more points to play around with, the hard-hitting units in my army. So what I was doing is I was using the small units of 8-bound to be cheap trades earlier on in the game. So the first 1 or 2 turns of most games, I was going out with the 5 units of 8-bound, getting my points and dying, but when I die on objectives, making them sticky. So that, I still score the points for them and stuff like that. So I was getting quite a build-up of points early on by using my smaller units and the jackals and stuff. That there came a point in the game, usually like turn 3, where I could go, right, if I now do advance and charge, I can send in Angron comfortably now. In turn 3, I can send in Angron to smack something. But it's at the same time that I'm going to be sending in 10 Khorne Berserkers with Khan the Betrayer and 10 Khorne Berserkers with the Master of Executions. And all 3 of the really hard-hitting bricks in my army are now going to hit your force, kill 3 or 4 things from your army. But also, when you add the 3 or 4 things that have just died from your army to the 3 or 4 things that my 8-bound have slowly killed over the first 2 turns of the game, there aren't very many threats left to deal with Angron. And if they do deal with Angron at that point, when it's turn 3 or 4 for them, then the 2 Khorne Berserker 10-man units are in and causing even more havoc. So I kind of found sending in the 3 bricks later on in the game, say turn 3, wait the first 2 turns, play tactically. I know the impulse, the impulse is there to just go all in because, you're playing World Eaters, it's there. Trust me, guys, holding off the trigger finger is a task because there were games when I was like, oh man, I just want to go and charge you. But, holding it in and going, right, use the jackals early on, use the 2 units of jackals and the 5 units of 8-bound. So that's what it did give me, not taking the Juggerlord characters. It gave me 7 units that I could trade with cheaply at the start of the game and then go, right, now we're in turn 3, we've scored a decent amount of points, we're just going to charge with all 3 big bricks at the same time, kill 3 or 4 good things from your army, and then see how much of a punch you have left after that. And the cool thing about World Eaters is they can score tactical cards really well because of the speed of the army at the same time that they're attacking your opponent. So I never really felt that I was using units and going, oh man, I want to charge with this unit, but I really can't because I need to do this action. Well, I was like, well, I've got extra jackals. I've got this rhino that can drop that unit off to do what they want. And, my rhino, because I've picked +2 inches of move this turn, my rhino is moving 14 inches and doing actions and stuff. So, playing that way, I played a little bit safer with Angron. I only kind of used him later on in the game, turns 3, 4, 5. So there were 2 games where he just went the entire game, he hit something, didn't go down, and then hit something again. And at that point, he just stayed at the end of the game. So 2 games he stayed to the end of the game, 3 games where he died, and in 2 of them, he came back.
Wow.
So it was really cool that he came back. But so there's only one roll I failed, I think, to bring him back, because in the game where he didn't come back, he died in turn 4. So I only got to roll to see if he came back in turn 5, and he didn't. So, but at that point, I didn't need him, so it's quite cool.
You rolled so well to bring him back twice in 2 games, and then 2 other games. So literally, you only had 1 game where it didn't go that well, but you still had him by turn 4. So by turn 5, it didn't matter anyway.
Yeah, it was one game where he was dead at the end of the game, and it was a World Eater's Mirror. It was against Dan Whitaker, who's a very, very strong player from Dice Down. I've had the honor of being teammates with him on a team event in Wales, and he's a very, very good player, really nice guy as well. And we had a fantastic game. He won the Angron off. His Angron was alive at the end of the game. My Angron was dead at the end of the game. He had more units at the end of the game, more of the hard-hitting units. But in that game, I sacrificed all of my units earlier on to get my tactical score as high as I could. And in the end, I bested down on the secondaries. It was a complete secondary game. We both scored 50 on the primaries.
Wow.
And it just came down to the secondaries where I scored 35 and he only scored 18 because he concentrated more on the killing and I concentrated more on, right, I'm going to let you kill whatever you want early on. I'm just going to go and score all the points and just get myself above 90 and make it hard for you to catch up.
So he let the bloodlusters go straight to his head.
Yeah, but he hit the right places, man. He killed everything important right when he wanted to, and I was like, wow, cool. But my Angron, I will say, that was the one game he didn't come back, but it was the one game where he fought on death and he killed Dan's Master of Executions and his entire squad when he fought on death.
Whoa.
So he had a massive impact on the game, even in death. So, and it is just, guys, I want to say, it's the funnest army I've played in like the last year and a half. It genuinely is.
I don't think I've heard an actual World Eaters player say that they don't enjoy playing World Eaters. I think just about everybody that
it's
plays
genuinely so much fun. Now, it's no secret because my aims were different like over the last year or so. I was trying to win the biggest tournaments that I could, and I really wanted to put on a strong show at the World Championships of Warhammer. But, I've said multiple times, the accursed cultist list that I've had so much success with, it was boring. It's a very, very strong army. In my opinion, it was quite boring to play. It was not enjoyable moving 3 bricks of cultists around every single turn of the game for 12 games. It's not fun. It was boring. The Chosen were fun. Playing with the 3 units of Chosen, because they were so fast, they were fun. But the Accursed were very boring. That was a boring army to play. But the World Eaters, I didn't have a single boring game, guys. It was all really fun.
When I watched you, because I watched you on stream for the LGT, and you went into the mirror on the LGT when you were on stream, if that right? Pretty sure that was
the LGT mirror, like CSM versus CSM.
Yeah, I'm almost certain it was a CSM versus CSM, and you had your big bricks, and you were playing against the young gentleman who I think went on to win it actually.
Oh, Liam VSL.
Yeah, that's it.
Oh no, me and Liam actually dodged each other. We
Who was it you played then?
I played against Hugo.
Oh, that's
with his Eldar on the stream. Yeah.
Because I watched you take your list, and I could kind of feel like the vibe from you is that it had very much, this is what you were going to do.
Yeah.
But it didn't look like it was fun for you.
Yeah, because that was the thing, right? It was very boring. Like, I went in with a vision of what I was going to try to accomplish, but it was quite boring because, as you saw, I was pretty much in my own half of the board until like turns 4 and 5. And that's very much because I was like, right, I've built this list. It plays Deploy Teleport Homers extremely well, and it plays Cleanse extremely well. All I need to do is make it to the middle of the board, just in my own half, in the middle of the board. If I can deploy homers in the middle of the board and I can cleanse the objective in the middle and the one on my top left, say, and just hold my home one with something irrelevant, that I'm good. I just need to get to these 2 middle objectives, and that's going to let me score like 90 to 95 points. And at some point in the game, I'm going to advance and charge with a Cursed Cultist brick and take your kind of bottom objective off you for 1 turn. So I'm just going to stop your primaries for 1 turn. And then that should give me like a score 90 plus, and even if you score everything you can at that point, you should get like 85 or maybe up to 90 because I've denied you primaries for a turn. So that was kind of the game. It was very much At some point in the game, I'm going to go for a charge to deny you some points. But other than that, I'm just going to sit on these objectives and keep doing my actions every game. So yeah, it was very well thought out, but kind of boring to execute. It genuinely was.
I could kind of feel that. I've got something from the chat, and I can't not because I promised him that I'd do it. So Paul Bridge from Vanguard Tactics. Does that name ring any bells to you? You probably met him a few times at the UKTC.
Yeah.
He is desperate to get you at a Peterborough Slam tournament.
Peterborough Slam.
Yeah. Now here we go.
Okay, that's cool.
So Peterborough. Do you know where Peterborough is? Got any rough idea? get you. Cause
hold on, I'm getting Google Maps right now.
yeah, good lad.
Peterborough. Okay, Peterborough is 80 miles from me.
Okay, so
Peterborough is 80 miles from me. 2 hours. Okay.
Paul,
that's not bad, actually.
So Paul runs a tournament every sort of 8 weeks. Myself and Toby,
Yeah.
we go quite regularly. I unfortunately can't go to the next one. Toby is going, and we've got about 6 Black Crow players going. And
certainly do.
Paul is one of the guys that helps run the tournaments in the East Anglian area. So we don't have any UKTC tournaments. Cambridge, Peterborough, Norwich, Ipswich way. They don't exist. So they're run by people like myself, Paul, and Elmo Miniatures, who does some tournaments. And Paul, he has, and I'm going to read this out to you, just for Paul. Paul's going to love me for this. He's been, would love to have Mani at Peterborough Slam. # make it happen.
# make it happen. Well, when is the next one?
Actually, next weekend.
This weekend.
yeah.
Oh, this weekend coming. Oh no, I have a really close friend's birthday this weekend. Otherwise, I would be playing for Team England in a team tournament that's happening this weekend. But no, yeah, I've got other commitments this weekend. But when's the next one?
We have got, I believe, a GT in April.
Okay.
But what I'll do, Manny, is post this chat. I will post you a bunch of dates of Peterborough Slam and EA.
Yeah, sure, man. If there's one in April, because at the moment, I know there's one UKTC event happening in April, which I will probably attend. But I don't think I have any other plans for any other tournaments so far. So my weekends look fairly free in April. If you send me the details for the April, the dates for the April one, I'll see if I can come along, and maybe my World Eaters will come out in Peterborough.
That'd be great. Well, I tell you what, after the stream, I'll send you some details for Peterborough Slam. 80 miles isn't actually that far away from you at all.
No,
really,
it's pretty close. Like it's I've just said hour and 45. It's totally fine.
Yeah, so it's actually closer to you than it is to me and Toby. We drive there from Norwich. There's nothing in Norwich. So I do the East Anglian Grand Tournament. So we do like 40-person GTs. But that's literally all we have in a good 50-mile radius until you get to Cambridge.
Okay.
Or Ipswich, for example. And even in Ipswich, it's only like 20 persons. So we don't have much on the hump of the UK, shall we say? Which is a shame. But we're growing it slowly.
Slowly grow the scene. That's it. It'll get bigger.
So what?
If Glasshammer Fancy is doing stuff down here, you feel free. You go right ahead, Manny. We're all for it.
We will have a look. I mean, that is something, we were not expecting the Super Major to be as popular as it has been in the opening week. It has definitely been, eye-opening how many people do want another kind of, Super Major size circuit in the UK, which we thought was quite cool. So I will say, I've not said this yet anywhere else, but I am already looking for the venue of the second event. There will be another one, and we're going to turn it into like a bit of a circuit. There's going to be multiple Super Major sized events from Glasshammer each year, and this is just the beginning.
I think if the success from your initial sales is anything to go by, it shows that there's a need and a want through a variety on the scene. So me and Don Maidlow and Toby, we had a chat not that long ago, and we were talking about how different types of terrain are competitive. So East Anglian Slam, this is where me and Paul and Elmo Miniatures, we all got together, and we brought 3 different types of terrain to a tournament. Hellstorm Gaming did it recently, and I think actually having a Super Major, and it is good to have uniform terrain, don't get me right, it's good, but I think having different types of Super Majors where people can then go to UKTC, come to a different type of like WTC style and be able to get that variety in play. I think it just keeps the competitive scene really fresh.
For sure. And this is what we were saying about, bringing something different, bringing a different terrain set so that people have variety, not stepping on each other's toes. It's not like, I want to go to this one instead of this one. It's like, I want to go to this one, and I also want to go to this one because it's a bit different, giving people choices.
I just in the chat, one of the guys has just put lower soft super major. Let's see it. I'm sorry, unstable llama. Great name, not happening.
I was going to say, Mani, do you even know where Lowestoft is?
No.
No. Sorry, Arron.
You're better off not knowing where that is. So. One army we've not talked about, and this is from one of our guys who's been watching. He's asked this at the very beginning. This is from Andrew. He said, "I'd love to know what Mani thinks of the Leagues of Votann in a competitive setting." So, if you're happy to answer that one, Mani.
Yeah, for sure. I think Leagues of Votann are a strong army. They are a strong army. They just have a few pitfalls, and unfortunately for them, one of their worst matchups is one of the armies that's right at the top, Eldar. Now, Eldar is a bad matchup for Votann because of the speed. Eldar have the speed to take advantage of the fact that Votann don't have very much speed other than the Sagittars. And yeah, I think Eldar are a massive problem for Votann. That's why maybe we aren't seeing Votann going and smashing so many events, is because the bad matchup for them is very prevalent at the top of the meta. But I think they are a strong army for sure. I think after the data slate as well, and this is a key thing here, right? Is I think there's a level just below the top tier of armies, which has like World Eaters, Leagues of Votann, Adeptus Custodes, armies like that in there. And I think when the armies at the top, like the Necrons, Eldar, CSM, when those armies get balanced in this data slate, they're going to get balanced by being knocked down a peg or two. And then the armies that are just below, like we're saying, World Eaters, Custodes, and Leagues of Votann, if they get a small boost, or if they don't get touched and they stay whereabouts they are, then they'll all of a sudden be able to hopefully give these armies at the top, like Eldar and TSM, a strong game because they've been knocked down a peg or two. And maybe a few things will get fixed in there for Eldar that means it's not such a bad matchup for Votann anymore.
So we talked about the Meta Monday, Mani, and we said about Votann. So we actually find when we look at Meta Monday, Votann tend to do quite well in other countries. So this one's called the New Year's Knockout in Raytown, which I can only assume is in America. That was 49.
Is that America?
Yeah, 49 players, 5 rounds. Custodes went 5, not Custodes, sorry. Votann went 5-0. Orcs went 5-0. So that kind of every time we look at these events that aren't in the UK, like we've talked about this previously on Steam. It's like,
I mean, if you just enlarge that picture that you just had there again. So you look at that, you've got Votann, Orcs, Necrons, Space Marines, Necrons, Death Guard, Black Templars, Admech, Black Templars, Necrons. That's the top 10, right?
Yeah.
There's no Eldar there.
Yeah.
And that's the worst matchup for Votann.
Tells you everything you need to know, really, doesn't it?
Right. Exactly. So Eldar is the worst matchup for Votann. Like, they're not present. Look how well Votann have done there.
And this is why we like the Meta Monday, because it kind of gives you a little bit of a highlight. And we're going to have a quick look. So you can see Necrons are dominating. So Necrons, CSM, Space Marines. Necrons, Tau, Grey Knights have come up a couple times. But this is only a 30 player. And we do say when we look at these, when you get to like lower number tournaments, like this is where people can go in and spike wins, right? Because you might have your best players in the area at different tournaments, and then you only need one person who's particularly good in their area to go with like their random army. And
like a faction specialist, somebody who plays one faction, plays that really, really well, and knows all of their matchups. That's something to be said as well.
And that does happen. I've got to get rid of that ad because it just says Prince Harry and William finally talk about their sister Laura. Which I think we're just spreading misinformation at this point.
That's top of the meta. That's the top of the meta discussion right there.
Yeah, I know, right?
Prince Harry's World Eater. Oh my god.
So Razorick is like, at WCW was GW trying to talk with top player about balancing, trying to get the point of view from the players. So I'm going to let you answer this.
Yeah, Atlanta.
Yeah.
No, they weren't. Now, I think the thing to appreciate there is that the guys running the World Championships of Warhammer are not the guys that write the rules of balance the game. They're just not. Okay, they'll feed back to the team, but they're not the actual team that writes the rules. So they weren't asking for top players kind of like advice or opinions on things. But I will say that the person I spoke about earlier on, the person who is now, in charge of balancing the game or helping balance the game in a large, impactful, meaningful way, that person was in attendance at the World Championship of Warhammer, and they were asking other top players, because he's a top player, in his own right. I think, in my opinion, one of the best players of all time. You know how you say like there's some players that could be considered, the best players in the world and stuff like that. Well, I think this player, he's probably, in my opinion, one of, if not the best player of all time, in my opinion. He's the only person I know that's been winning tournaments in 6 different editions of 40k. They've been winning tournaments since 4th edition, and now we're in 10th edition, and they're still winning tournaments. So I think that person is very experienced, is a top player in themselves, but also he attends so many of super majors and events like WCW, and actually speaks to top players on a regular basis. So I think now this balanced data slate now is, I think, the first time that they're having a very meaningful, impactful say in what happens in the meta, and I think it's going to be great. In my opinion, it's going to be very positive, because I think this player has a wealth of experience, and like we say, he does communicate with other top players in the meta, for sure he does.
And there's been some really positive comments about it. It's been as also one of the nicest top players I've experienced. There's one guy, and we're going to do one more question, and then we'll look at wrapping it up. This is from Unstable Llama, because obviously we shot him down so hard about the lower stuff.
That's such a cool name. That's such a cool name.
He's even got a picture of a llama on his thing. How much do you think Drukhari actually need? Are they really that bad?
Yeah, they are. Yeah, I was thinking about a way to say that, but yeah, they are. There's so many terrible matchups for Drukhari right now. They do need a big change. I don't know what that change is going to be, but they do need a big change.
You can't just keep making them cheaper and cheaper and cheaper, right?
No, you can't just keep making them cheaper. I think either making them some way better at the mission, or making them hit harder than they do, I think is something that maybe needs to be looked at. Sort of if they could trade quite reliably, that would be a good thing, because that's when Drukhari was so good before, is because they traded so efficiently. I think if they could trade a little bit better than they do right now, then for sure. I mean, at the moment, Darklands is all you take Drukhari for. Some of the lists that are doing well is 40 Darklances. And that's because it's skewed so heavily that when you come up against any army that's got 3 or 4 vehicles or more in there, you're just going to absolutely destroy every vehicle they got. But the minute that they come to you with, say, an infantry army that's just got 2 rhinos in it, then, your lances are pointless now. So I think Drukhari do need some help. I think they need revisiting the way that they play. For sure.
Well, thank you very much for answering that. Look, Mani, we're going to bring it up because obviously I'm aware it's getting late. I just want to say a massive thank you from us, Black Crow Gaming, for coming in and attending and being.
Oh, no worries, man.
It was great laugh.
No worries. Thank you very much for having me. I think it's fantastic. I've had loads of fun, and how could we not talk about the World Eaters?
Yeah,
Angry Ron, there he is.
Look at him. Look how cool he is.
He is so cool, isn't he?
Oh, he's easily one of the best models Games Workshop's released in a long time.
He's super good. He's grown on me. So I think everybody that knows me knows that I released a TikTok reel thing that was a minute long, saying that I think Arron looks terrible. And that was when the model first came out. Because the reason why I thought that at the start was, in my thinking, it was that he's a Primarch. Primarchs should have their own individual kind of look. And I was really impressed with Mortarion, because, he's a Nurgle Primarch, but he doesn't look anything like a Great and Clean one, which I thought was fantastic. He's got his own identity. Magnus looks phenomenal, but he doesn't look anything like a Lord of Change. He's got his own identity. And then comes Angron, and I'm like, that just reminds me of a Bloodthirster. He actually does look like a Bloodthirster. So I actually was not a big fan of the model at the start, but then it's grown on me. And, you look at it and you're like, actually, he's got a lot more armor on than a Bloodthirster. He's got different weapons to a Bloodthirster. He's got the Butcher's nails if you look closely.
Yeah.
And you're like, actually, he does have his own identity. He is quite different. He's quite different to a Bloodthirster when you look at it on, a bit deeper. And
so is this your
also,
official retraction?
Yeah, because you know what? I looked a little bit more into the lore. And, I read my World Eaters Codex, looked a bit more into the lore, and he's supposed to be like that. Yeah. He's supposed to be very Bloodthirster-esque, actually, and just loses shit and go mental. So I was like, you know what? He's actually true to the lore. The model is true to the lore, and I actually I love it now. I think it's great.
I think as one of the things as well, we won't carry on because we could go on all night about this sort of stuff. The paint jobs really matter on these sorts of models.
Oh yeah, for sure. If I painted it myself, I think it'd look crap, and it'd be one of my least loved models, I think. But David has done a phenomenal job on all my World Eaters, and we stayed true. The rest of the army is blue and white heresy, but Angron always had brass armor, so he is not blue and white. He stands out from the rest of the army, and I think that's one of the things I like most about the heresy scheme is Angron really stands out from the rest of your army.
Thank you very much. Again, Mani, thank you very much. Lots of people in the chat really enjoyed it. We've had loads of people tune in tonight. It's been fantastic having you on.
Thank you very much for having me. It's been really good fun. And thank you very much, everyone in the chat, for listening and, enjoying it.
Yeah. So from us at Black Crow Gaming, if you could do some magical things for us, if you're not already subscribe to us so you can see our battle reports that happen on the Sundays, released every Sunday, and then we come on for our live Meta Monday talks on a Monday evening. If you could also do another thing and is like this live stream, it means that we'll get more attendance and more people will come and view us, and then more people will get to see and hear the excellent podcast we've just done with Mani and talking about his tournament in the future, which we're all super excited to go. We've just had another person confirm that they've bought a ticket for your event.
Oh yes, awesome! Keep them coming, guys. Keep them coming. Let's make it. Let's make it the first super major size WTC event in the UK.
I mean, it will sell out. There's no doubt about it, is there? But
I will be claiming it's for my birthday. I hope you know that, Mani.
Yeah, we ran it just for your birthday.
Just for your 16th birthday?
Thank you. That's kind of my 16th birthday.
No, it is, man. We thought, you know what would be lovely is if we can get 300 people to give you birthday beats. And that's why we did it.
Yeah. And we might, Toby, we might finally be able to get to a stage where you can grow a beard.
No, I tried recently. It did not go well, but I won't bore you with that.
But anyway, we're going to say goodbye for now. This is from us from Black Crow Gaming, Arron and Toby, and obviously our special guest, Mani.
Bye, guys.
Bye.
Thank you very much for listening, guys. Bye.